Hey, welcome back to another episode. This is JR, founder and CEO of Social Market, and this is my partner, Leon Hitchens, CMO of Social Market, and this is Social Ledger Report.
We've got some cool stories this week, and there's still a ton of stuff happening in crypto. I don't think it'll stop, but
Yeah.
good and bad for us.
Yeah, well, this is why we're here to help you understand what's been happening with the state of the markets and with crypto on a weekly basis. We're changing things up a little this week, so for the first time, we're going to try to release a video Monday instead of our Friday schedule because we're still trying to figure things out, make sure what we're producing for you is to your liking. So if you have any suggestions, things that you'd like to see, please let us know in the comments. And before we continue with this video, please subscribe to our channel if you find it of any interest. If you want to stay up to date on the weekly news that are happening in the markets, subscribe to the channel for that. But with that said, I actually want to demo what Social Market is. I think it's a good time right now to demo the app or to show you kind of what we're doing. State of the market for the last week is as follows. It's pretty much Bitcoin season instead of altcoin season, meaning, a lot more people are buying Bitcoin or use it more. Fear and greed index is about 60%, so it's about greed. How's Bitcoin? Bitcoin for the last week has been going up and down. I know earlier this week there was that whole conflict with Israel and Iran. I'm not an expert, so I can make comments beyond that, but it did affect the markets. So it was reaching about 110, 112, and now it went down to closer to 100, and then now it's back at 105,000. So Bitcoin is jumping up and down. So that's as far as this.
Holding above 100. I think that's the key part. 105 is pretty good considering it's been holding steady above 103 roughly for the most part.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I think earlier this year, everyone was concerned that Bitcoin wasn't going to go back to 100,000 again because of the state of the economy and price of eggs and everything, whatever concern it was back then. But it's remained strong. It's remaining still at over 100. So I think this is strong for everyone, strong for the space. So overall, it's pretty exciting to be here. But that's pretty much as far as it goes for the markets. On to our first story. We're going to be talking about the state of the crypto regulation, HR 1747, Blockchain Regulatory Certainty Act, and the Clarity Act that has made significant progress in the Senate floor, or I think in Congress. So we're going to talk more about that here in a moment. And then next, we're going to talk about Polymarket joining X as both brands partner so they can leverage each other's data sets and database and code base to enhance their overall products. So they partnered, and that's kind of big. Everyone was talking about it on Twitter. I still call it Twitter, at least.
I think we all do.
Right. So, and in our last story, we will talk about the State of Crypto Summit by Coinbase. A lot of interesting stuff happened there, and I actually put together a couple of things that I want to talk about with how credit cards are starting to adopt Bitcoin. We've seen this with the Gemini credit card, but now we're going to see that to some level with the new Coinbase card, which we'll talk about more here in a moment. The House introduced digital asset market structure legislation building on discussion draft. So what this means, and we'll leave a link to this article below, on May 5th, 2025, several House committees jointly introduced a discussion draft for a bill that would establish regulatory framework for digital assets on May 29th. House Financial Service Committee Chairman French Hill, Republican for Arkansas, introduced an updated version of this bill named the Digital Asset Market Clarity Act, or Clarity Act. So I'm not going to go through everything here. You can look at it again on your own. But what all of this talks about is why it's important to have this bill. As some of you who have been in the crypto space long enough, you will see that some businesses were being classified as money transmitters or some sort of bank by the previous administration with the SEC and Gary Gensler. So this is kind of what the Clarity Act is trying to do, actually interpret the law, because with the SEC before, they were saying they were breaking the law, even though there was no law to be broken. There was no certainty or clarity to how this law was. So this is kind of like the story. Again, so this bill was first introduced on May 29th.
I think the big part too of this is like the key part of it is its infrastructure that it's protecting. So
Yes.
before you had software developers, you had node operators, validators, miners, any like the multi-sig service providers were being classified as money transmitters. So it's really protecting the infrastructure layer that there's people building on it. So it helps this scale legally and gives everybody like some clarity on what's happening. You know, even with social market, like that was one of the conversations you had early on.
Yeah.
Is I think with a lawyer that you needed to get very specific licensing because you could be considered a financial middleman in the end, and it's helping so much give a stable environment for Web3 founders. It's promoting like good actors, and then it's giving the United States a place to regain global leadership in building Web3 products. Because for the most part, I feel like China's banned Bitcoin, crypto left and right, back and forth, but like most people that were building Web3 products were Southeast Asia. I saw some Europe.
Yep.
Like there was some people in the United States, but the United States had a big gaping question of just regulatory frameworks.
Yeah, actually, Japan. Now that you mentioned Asia or Southeast Asia, Japan is actually one of the one of the early Asian countries that adopted Bitcoin and crypto regulation. Like they were charging less taxes than any other countries as far as capital gains taxes. So yeah, I mean, to your point. Yeah, so going back to the story real quick here. So even though this bill was introduced in May 29th, it was actually making progress just early this week. So Senate Majority Leader John Thune, I think I pronounced his name right, John Thune, he was the one who was making progress. This is from Tom Emmer, but this is him back in May 21st talking about the bill. But then at a later time, he quotes his tweet earlier this week saying, "If you do not custody consumer funds, you aren't a money transmitter, plain and simple. Our nonpartisan Blockchain Regulatory Certainty Act, which codifies this simple concept, has been added to the Clarity Act." And he thanks Representative French Hill, Brian Stale, Ritchie for their support. So they're all part of the same committee who kind of came together, saying, hey, this has actually been making progress here in the Senate. So Brian Armstrong later came out this week saying, thank you to Leader John Thune for moving the Genius Act to the Senate for getting closer. So this is him. This is Brian Armstrong responding to Kara Clovert, or retweeting it, saying, where her original post said, hey, I'm grateful to the senators on both sides of the aisle who have burned the midnight oil for weeks to find a bipartisan path forward on the Genius Act. Huge thanks to Leader John Thune for bringing the finish line within reach. So at the end of the day, I think a lot of this progress was made because of the John Thune, the majority leader for the Republican side. So it's always great to see.
There's a word for it. Bipartisan.
Yeah.
There we go. There's a bipartisan
exactly.
support for the bill. And then also when you get industry leaders like Brian Armstrong, like
Yep.
rarely do you have industry leaders and lawmakers aligned. It's a big signal to kind of get this over the hump and actually into law.
Brian Armstrong is a very passionate founder. He's from YC. For those of you who may or may not know. So I think when you have founders who come from such a, I want to say, prestigious accelerator, and they have that kind of caliber, they're very particular about the kind of people that get into that accelerator. This is kind of like what you get. You get leaders who are very high caliber, representing people. I think that's where a lot of major progress can be made, because right now, crypto is updating the financial system as we know it, which is part of the reason why we're building a startup on crypto. We believe in that mission, and I think Brian has been doing an incredible job at passing that message for everyone, and I believe has helped a lot to transform the crypto or the industry to be more adopted, be more trusted because of people like Brian Armstrong. To your point, Leon.
Yeah, and like you need a face to a movement. Like you need somebody to go to Congress to represent. You need somebody to advocate on the internet. And two parts here is Twitter. Between everything, Twitter is a really big sign of like things still happen on this platform, even though everyone says that it's kind of died. But Brian Armstrong pushing it along. I think he worked at IBM. I forget where else he worked. And
He worked at
that
Airbnb at one point.
Okay, yes, Airbnb as a engineer, and then he used that YC money to found Coinbase. Like, huge investment for YC, and seeing it, in the future. Like, massive play on their part.
Yeah, so he actually worked in IBM, like you said, and Deloitte. Deloitte is a pretty big software consulting company.
Yeah.
So pretty big companies that he worked in. So, but yeah, I think this is pretty much as far as we have to cover for this story. We'll keep you guys updated next week if any changes happen with Senate floor as far as the Genius Act or the Crypto Clarity Act.
Yeah, you might
Stay up
see
to
it
date
as
with that.
HR 17472. So, a few
Yeah.
names to this one. It's a little confusing.
Yeah, every bill almost starts with an HR, I believe, in some 4 digits. So
Okay.
we'll keep you guys up to date with it.